In 1962, 3 inmates vanished from the most secure penitentiary in the world. They were never seen again. No bodies. No evidence. Only a trail of makeshift tools, a homemade raft. And a question still unanswered to this day. Did they survive? This is the story of Alcatraz, the escape that defied logic, broke history, and still leaves the world wondering what happened on that foggy night. It is one of the most haunting mysteries in American history. A tale of cold steel, concrete, and men who refused to be caged. An island turned into a fortress. A prison turned into legend. Alcatraz Island, known simply as the Rock, sits like a phantom in the middle of San Francisco Bay. Just over a mile from the mainland, its cliffs rise sharp from the sea, beaten by waves and crowned with cold stone walls. It began as a military garrison during the Civil War. Then a military prison. And finally, in 1934, it became the ultimate symbol of federal punishment. Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary. This wasn't just another prison. It was the prison. Built to contain America's worst, bank robbers, murderers, and escape artists who had beaten every other system. Among its inmates were infamous names like Al Capone, George "Machine Gun" Kelly, and Robert Stroud, the Birdman of Alcatraz. Surrounded by frigid water, swift currents, and constant patrols, escape was more than unlikely. It was a death sentence. Even if you made it over the wall, you had the Pacific to answer to. Between 1934 and 1963, 36 men attempted to escape. All but 3 were caught, shot, or presumed drowned. Those 3? They vanished on the night of June 11, 1962. And that's where our real story begins. They were just names on a prison roster, until they weren't. On paper, they were inmates. Criminals. But behind the bars, they were engineers. Thinkers. Dreamers of freedom. Their names were Frank Lee Morris, John Anglin, Clarence Anglin. Together, they executed the most daring escape in U.S. penal history. Frank Morris was the mastermind. Born in Washington, D.C., in 1926, he bounced from foster homes to juvenile detention, sharpening not just his criminal instincts, but his intelligence. Prison records list his IQ as 133, well above average. He was smart. Calculated. A quiet man who kept to himself, but watched everything. He was serving 14 years for bank robbery. But he had bigger plans. Then came the Anglin brothers, John and Clarence. Born into a family of 13 children in rural Georgia. They moved often, following their parents as seasonal farm workers. Hard labor. Poverty. No future. They started robbing banks with toy guns in the early 50s. They weren't violent, but they were slippery. Caught, sentenced, and like Morris, they found their way to Alcatraz after multiple escape attempts elsewhere. Morris and the Anglins met at Atlanta Penitentiary, years before Alcatraz. They knew each other. Trusted each other. And when fate placed them in adjoining cells at Alcatraz, something clicked. They started to plan. Not a fantasy. Not a foolish act of desperation. A step-by-step, months-long operation. Their blueprint? Patience, silence, and one broken vacuum cleaner motor. They were joined by a 4th man, Alan West, who shared the plan and contributed to the effort. But in the end, West would stay behind. Not by choice. But because of a critical mistake. That comes later. First, let's look at how the plan unfolded. And how they slowly chipped away at a prison that no one had ever escaped. They had 6 months. And 1,000 chances to fail. But they didn't. Escape isn't a single act. It's 1,000 actions done in silence. A routine repeated over and over until the impossible becomes routine. Starting in December of 1961, Frank Morris, the Anglin brothers, and Alan West began working toward the greatest prison escape in American history. They had no blueprints. No internet. Only their brains, hands, and scraps. And somehow, that was enough. It began with saw blades smuggled in from the prison workshop, a spoon stolen from the mess hall, and a broken vacuum cleaner, turned into a drill. Their goal? To loosen the ventilation grills at the back of their cells. Each night, after lights out, they scraped and drilled. In silence. For hours. They worked while others slept just feet away. By drilling holes in tight rows and chiseling around them, they removed entire wall sections, one concrete chunk at a time. Behind each cell wall was a dark, forgotten utility corridor. No guards. No patrols. Just pipes, dust, and shadows. It was their underground highway. Once through, they created a secret workshop in the space above the cell block, hidden from every camera and every guard. And here's where it gets brilliant. They didn't just plan to run. They planned to sail. Over the next 6 months, they collected over 50 raincoats from fellow inmates, traded, stolen, or snuck out from laundry duty. Their goal? To build a 6 by 14-foot raft, strong enough to cross San Francisco Bay. With thread pulled from prison blankets and steam heat from the pipes, they carefully stitched and vulcanized the seams. The inspiration? A magazine found in the prison library, Popular Mechanics. They even created life jackets using the same method. To inflate the raft, they converted a concertina, a small musical instrument, into a hand pump. They carved wooden paddles using stolen floorboards. And, of course, they had to hide it all. Every night, before lights on, they covered the holes in their cells with cardboard, suitcases, or a false vent. And up in the workshop, they hid the raft beneath a fake floor panel. Security didn't even blink. And what about the guards? They couldn't be allowed to notice the escape during nightly checks. So the prisoners made dummy heads, plaster, paint, soap, toilet paper, and real human hair from the prison barbershop. They placed them on their pillows under the covers each night. From the cell door, it looked like they were asleep. And it worked. Everything was ready. The tunnel. The raft. The fakes. They only needed one more thing. A way out of the prison itself. The final obstacle? A 30-foot climb-up pipes in the utility corridor. And a sealed ventilation shaft cover bolted shut. Their solution? Pry it open ahead of time, then wedge it shut with a bar of soap, sculpted to look like a bolt. Ingenious. Simple. Deadly effective. On the evening of June 11, 1962, they made their move. But not all of them would get out. The island was quiet. The guards made their last rounds. Nothing seemed unusual, just another wind-chilled night on the rock. But in 3 cells along the middle row of cell block B, something was happening. A plan, 6 months in the making, was in motion. One by one, Frank Morris, John Anglin, and Clarence Anglin removed the false vents in their cells. Behind the walls, the narrow utility corridor they had carved open. They crawled through, met quietly in the passage, and climbed the pipes to the ceiling. Their tools? A raft. 2 paddles. And a fake bolt made of soap. They were almost free. But not everyone made it. Alan West, the 4th conspirator, was still in his cell. Earlier, he had applied his routine, removed the vent, crawled through. But that night, something went wrong. The grill wasn't fully loosened. He couldn't remove it. Panic set in. He tried to chisel faster, desperately, hacking at the last bit of concrete. But by the time he broke through, the others were gone. He had missed the escape of a lifetime. By minutes. Meanwhile, above him, Morris and the Anglins pushed open the rooftop vent. They stepped out onto the roof of the cell house. For a moment, the wind hit them full in the face. Fog rolled in from the bay. But the prison didn't stir. They had trained for this. They stayed low. Silent. Invisible. They climbed down the bakery smokestack on the back side of the building, a tall, narrow stack rarely patrolled. They crossed the fence and made their way to the northeast shoreline of the island. Waiting for them in the shadows, a deflated raft, 2 handmade paddles, 3 makeshift life vests, and the cold, deadly waters of San Francisco Bay. They worked quickly, unrolling the raft, inflating it with the modified concertina. The bay was choppy that night. Winds came in from the northwest. The water temperature? 53 degrees Fahrenheit, 11 degrees Celsius. Lethal in less than an hour. But they didn't hesitate. They launched. They paddled toward Angel Island, a mile and a half away. And then they disappeared. By morning, they were gone. Their cells undisturbed. Their beds filled with plaster heads. The night guard never suspected a thing. The greatest escape in American prison history had happened. But no one knew it yet. June 12, 1962. 6:30 a.m. The unthinkable had just become reality. The guards opened the cells, only to find plaster dummy heads tucked beneath the sheets. Real human hair. Skin tone paint. False noses. So lifelike. They passed 10 bed checks. It was a perfect illusion. But now the illusion was gone. The prison went on full lockdown. The guards fanned out across the island, sweeping every corridor, roof, tunnel, and fence. But the trail was cold. By 9 a.m., the FBI had been notified. They moved in quickly, alongside the U.S. Marshals, Bureau of Prisons, and Coast Guard. The question was simple. Where were they? The agents knew they had to move fast. If the men were alive, they could be anywhere by now. Every boat operator in the bay was questioned. Every ferry dock was watched. Police patrols searched Angel Island and Marin County. Meanwhile, back at Alcatraz, agents began interviewing inmates, including Alan West. He had missed the escape. But now, he was talking. West told them everything. How they started with saw blades. How they loosened the vents. How they used the vacuum motor to drill. How the raft was hidden. And how they planned to reach Angel Island, then steal a car and clothes from the mainland. The FBI finally had a full picture of the escape. But it only made things more urgent. Could the men have actually survived the bay? Then, the first real clue surfaced. June 14, 1962, 2 days after the escape. A plastic-wrapped envelope was found floating near Angel Island. Inside, letters, personal photographs, and numbers matching those assigned to the Anglins. The documents had been protected from water, sealed in rubber. That meant they made it at least part of the way across the bay. Then came more. A paddle washed up on Cronkite Beach near the Golden Gate Bridge. A homemade life vest made from raincoat material was found nearby. But there was no sign of the raft. And no sign of the men. Were these leftovers? Or signs of tragedy? The FBI tested the tides. They concluded that objects dropped near Alcatraz could drift to Angel Island or out to sea, depending on the exact time of night. If the raft sank, they might have drowned silently. If it held, they could have landed under cover of darkness and vanished. No bodies were ever found. Over the next 2 weeks, the FBI scoured the region. They interviewed family members, tracked old associates, and cross-referenced every stolen vehicle report. Nothing. There were no thefts. No confirmed sightings. No financial activity. Nothing to indicate that the men had help, or even survived. But behind the scenes, theories were forming. Some agents believed they died. Others weren't so sure. Because for every dead lead, there was just enough evidence to make you wonder. No solid proof. No trace. But the case was far from closed. They were gone. No bodies. No footprints. No evidence of arrival, or death. The FBI spent 17 years chasing shadows. And in the end, they gave up. But the question lingers in the American imagination like a whisper on the waves. Could they have survived? Let's look at what they were up against. 1. The bay itself. The water temperature that night hovered between 50 to 54 degrees Fahrenheit, 10 to 12 degrees Celsius. Strong currents. Shifting tides. Inmates had always believed that if the guards didn't catch you, the bay would. But here's the twist. In the years since, dozens of people, even children, have made that swim successfully. Yes, they had it harder. No training. Darkness. Fog. But they also had a raft, and life jackets. Survival was tough. But not impossible. 2. Their plan. According to Alan West, they aimed to land on Angel Island. Rest. Dry off. Then, under cover of early morning darkness, paddle across Raccoon Strait to Marin County. From there, steal a car. Find clothes. Disappear. And remarkably, there were no stolen cars reported. That's not proof they failed. It might be proof they succeeded quietly. 3. Family support. The FBI investigated the Anglin family thoroughly. They were poor. No connections. No evidence of offshore accounts, fake IDs, or international travel. Still, the family claimed the brothers had sent them Christmas cards. No postmarks. No return address. Just handwriting that matched. And then there were the photographs. This photo surfaced in the 1990s, supposedly taken in Brazil, showing 2 men the family claimed were John and Clarence Anglin. Facial recognition software later confirmed that the faces had an extremely high probability match to the brothers. And in 2018, the FBI received a letter, purportedly from John Anglin, claiming he was still alive. The letter stated, "My name is John Anglin. I escaped from Alcatraz in June 1962 with my brother Clarence and Frank Morris. I'm 83 years old and in bad shape. Yes, we all made it." The FBI tested it for DNA and fingerprints. The results? Inconclusive. Too degraded. The trail had gone cold again. But not before the U.S. Marshals made one quiet decision. They would keep the case open. Indefinitely. It's been over 60 years. None of the men were ever found. No remains. No confirmed sightings. No arrests. But to this day, Frank Morris, John Anglin, and Clarence Anglin remain wanted men. And whether they died in the dark waves, or lived quiet lives somewhere far away, one thing is certain. They beat Alcatraz. Alcatraz was built to be unbreakable. A fortress of concrete, steel, and cold water. An island prison with one unshakable rule. Nobody escapes. But in June of 1962, 3 men rewrote that rule. Frank Morris, John Anglin, Clarence Anglin. Whether they survived or not, they did what no one else ever had. They escaped the rock. Just 1 year after the escape, in 1963, Alcatraz was shut down. Too expensive. Too deteriorated. Too broken. Some say the escape broke its image. Others say it was already doomed. But the myth? That only grew stronger. The escape inspired films, documentaries, books, and global speculation. It became part of pop culture, prison lore, and American legend. Over the years, hundreds of tourists walk through the old cell block where the escape began. They see the vents, the tunnels, the heads on the pillows. And they wonder, could I have done it? Would I have tried? Even now, the official story is that the men probably drowned. But the US Marshals haven't given up. Because somewhere out there, a man might still be alive. A man who escaped the inescapable. 3 men. 1 raft. An ocean of questions. Did they drown in silence? Or live in secrecy? Did they vanish in the fog? Or slip quietly into new lives? The truth may never be known. But their escape from Alcatraz will never be forgotten. So, what do you think? Did Morris and the Anglins die that night? Or did they outsmart one of the most secure prisons in history? Drop your theory in the comments. And if you enjoyed diving into this unsolved mystery, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more captivating true crime stories. This has been The Escape from Alcatraz. Until next time, stay curious.